A police dog prevented a pilot from boarding his aircraft, resulting in delays and passenger frustration. However, when security personnel investigated under the cockpit seat, the discovery caused everyone to evacuate. Here's the story. Before we proceed, please share your location in the comments. If you enjoy unusual police dog stories like this one, remember to subscribe for future content. A stark light from the fluorescent fixtures illuminated Terminal 3 of O'Hare International Airport as Officer Michael Reeves straightened his winter patrol jacket, his exhale seen in the January cold filtering through the automatic doors. Adjacent to him, Titan, his German Shepherd partner for 3 years, kept a precise heel position, his dark eyes observing the continuous flow of travelers with seasoned focus. The morning rush was underway, with passengers hurrying to their gates through the snowstorm that had blanketed Chicago overnight. Weather delays had created a tense atmosphere, with anxious travelers checking departure boards and flight crews rushing to minimize further disruptions. Just another day in paradise. Huh, boy? Reeves murmured, reaching down to scratch behind Titan's ear. The shepherd leaned into his touch briefly before resuming his vigilant posture. Reeves smiled, recalling that his colleagues had given Titan the nickname the Professor because of his almost unsettling ability to analyze situations. The dog never barked without cause, a trait that had made them one of the airport's most respected security teams. They continued their sweep through the international terminal, Titan moving with fluid grace between bags and passengers. Occasionally, he would look toward Reeves, their long history of working together clear in the understated exchanges between them. They had recently gone by the exclusive airline lounges when Titan's demeanor changed sharply, a transformation so abrupt that Reeves immediately perceived it. The shepherd's ears rose, his body tightening as his attention settled on a pilot walking assuredly through the crew's security lane. Captain James Harrington, as indicated on his visible ID badge, proceeded toward the flight deck preparation area. A flight bag was slung over one shoulder. He appeared unremarkable. His uniform was spotless, and his demeanor professional, as he nodded to the security personnel. However, Titan shifted from routine patrol to heightened alertness. A low growl emanated from his throat, quickly intensifying to insistent barking as he pulled Reeves toward the pilot. "Titan, hail!" Reeves gave the command, but for the first time in their partnership, Titan disregarded the order. The shepherd moved forward, placing himself directly in the pilot's path, his barking now attracting startled glances from everyone nearby. When Captain Harrington tried to step around him, Titan mirrored his movements, physically preventing him from going any further. "Control your dog, officer," Harrington snapped, his face reddening as passengers began to stare. "I have a transatlantic flight departing in 40 minutes. I apologize for the inconvenience, Captain," Reeves said, keeping his voice measured while maintaining his grip on Titan's leash. "But my partner doesn't react this way without a reason." Harrington's jaw tightened. "Well, your partner is mistaken. I've been flying for American Airlines for 15 years. I don't have time for this." Airport Security Supervisor Diane Coleman stepped forward, her expression carefully neutral, given the unfolding situation in the bustling terminal. "What's the situation, Reeves?" she inquired softly. "Titan's alerting strongly to the captain here," Reeves responded, observing that Titan's focus remained consistently on Harrington. "I've never seen him react this intensely to airline personnel." "This is ridiculous," Harrington stated, glancing at his watch. "Flight 862 to London was already delayed because of the snowstorm. I have 243 passengers waiting to board." Coleman glanced between the barking shepherd and the increasingly agitated pilot. "Officer Reeves, you know we can't delay a flight because your dog is having an episode." Reeves felt the weight of the decision pressing on him. 3 years of working with Titan had taught him to trust the dog's instincts implicitly. Titan's assessments had proven accurate previously, including the discovery of a concealed weapon last year and the identification of a drug smuggler with surgical implants 2 months ago. "I'm requesting a secondary screening for Captain Harrington," Reeves stated firmly. "Protocol allows for random additional security checks of all personnel, including flight crew." "This isn't random," Harrington snapped, his face growing redder. "It's harassment. I'm calling the Airline Operations Center." While the pilot reached for his phone, Reeves observed a detail that reinforced his determination. A subtle tremor in Harrington's hand, a tension around his eyes that was absent just moments prior, suggested fear, or perhaps annoyance at the delay. Regardless, it wasn't the usual response from airline employees who sometimes experienced random screening. "Sir, please accompany us for a brief additional check," Coleman stated, having made her decision. "We are working to speed up the procedure to reduce any impact on your flight." "This is unacceptable," Harrington exclaimed, but Reeves observed the pilot's gaze shifting towards the closest exit. "Captain, this situation can be resolved discreetly, or we can formally report it," Coleman cautioned. "The decision is yours." Harrington's shoulders dropped a little. "Very well, but the airline will be informed of this." As they guided the pilot towards the private screening room, Reeves lowered himself to speak with Titan, who had become a bit calmer but remained watchful. He whispered, "Good boy. I trust you." Reeves glanced over his shoulder and saw the departure board. Flight 862 to London Heathrow was delayed. He hoped he wasn't about to make the biggest mistake of his career or prevent the biggest disaster. The private screening room was austere, featuring white walls, a metal table, and 4 chairs under unforgiving fluorescent lights. Titan remained alert by the door as TSA officer Marcus Wong carefully examined Captain Harrington's credentials. Everything was in order, Wong said, checking the pilot's license and ID against the database. Captain James Harrington, with 15 years of experience at American Airlines, was current on all certifications and clearances. Harrington sat rigidly, his arms crossed. "As I said, may I please proceed to my aircraft?" he asked. "The flight plan has already been filed, and we're burning fuel on the tarmac." Reeves watched quietly as Wong examined Harrington's flight bag. Standard items were found inside. Flight manuals, navigation charts, spare epaulets, reading glasses, an energy bar, and a travel-sized toiletry kit. Nothing seemed out of the ordinary. "Sir, would you mind removing your jacket?" Wong inquired, his tone professional. Harrington complied with apparent annoyance, setting his uniform jacket on the table. This exceeded protocol even for a routine screening. Wong meticulously examined the jacket, inspecting each pocket and seam while Reeves observed Titan. The dog's focus remained constant. His gaze remained fixed on the pilot, tracking his every movement. After using her radio, Coleman checked with operations, then returned to the room, stating they're positioning a backup pilot just in case, but they need a decision within 15 minutes. Tension filled the small room. Reeves felt doubt begin to surface, even with his trust in Titan. The evidence, or the absence of it, was causing him to reevaluate his decision. "Look," Harrington said, his tone becoming more gentle. "I understand you're doing your job. Perhaps your dog detected the scent of my cat on my garments. I administered her medication this morning prior to departing." The reasoning seemed credible. Dogs sometimes react to animal odors, particularly medications containing chemical components resembling illicit substances. Wong finished his examination, discovering no irregularities. He confirmed that everything appeared correct. Coleman released a sigh of relief. "I believe we can exonerate Captain Harrington. We will document the event, and—" Titan abruptly barked loudly, standing up. Reeves knew from their time working together that this wasn't simple determination, it was a deliberate increase in intensity. The dog was signaling that they were overlooking something. "Sir," Reeves said cautiously, "could you please empty your trouser pockets as well?" Harrington's face registered a momentary shift. It was so subtle that most wouldn't have noticed it. "All right." He removed a wallet, keys, a phone, and some spare coins, setting them on the table. Wong scrutinized each item, paying close attention to the phone. Typical iPhone. "Is everything all right?" Harrington asked, gathering his things. As his sleeve moved, Reeves observed a slight dampness on the pilot's wrist, even though the room was cool. The man's breathing had also become a little faster. "Actually," Reeves said, "I'd like to request a full body scan and an ion detector swab." Harrington paused. "That's not a typical process for flight crew." "It is when there's reasonable suspicion," Coleman responded, her earlier skepticism diminishing as she also observed the pilot's changing behavior. "I need to make a call to my union representative, Harrington stated. Coleman nodded to Wong, who approached. Your phone will need to remain here during the additional screening, Captain. The atmosphere in the room had changed. What began as an apparent false alarm now felt like the beginning of something far more serious. While arrangements were being made to transfer Harrington to the advanced screening zone, Titan's actions changed once more. The dog moved towards the uniform jacket, which remained on the table, his attention becoming sharply focused. He's attempting to communicate something specific, Reeves observed, permitting Titan to approach the jacket. The dog carefully sniffed the garment, then stopped at the collar, gently but persistently pawing at the left lapel. Harrington expressed his discomfort. This is absurd. This was a standard uniform provided by the airline. Reeves recalled an incident from 6 months prior. A smuggler had concealed contraband within the clothing seams, bypassing typical security checks. Titan had discovered it at that time as well. I'd like to examine this more closely, Reeves stated, picking up the jacket. He gently ran his fingers along the collar and lapel, the areas Titan had pointed out. Despite the lack of any clear indication, he observed that the stitching on the left side seemed subtly different, almost too tight to readily see. We require the portable imaging equipment, he stated to Coleman, the type utilized for potential electronic compartments. You're dismantling my uniform because of a dog's reaction? Harrington exclaimed, his voice escalating. This is custom-tailored, valued at more than $1,000. Coleman paused briefly, then initiated the necessary communication. Should no evidence be located, the department will cover any damages, she guaranteed the pilot. While waiting for the equipment, Reeves thought about Titan's past. The Shepherd had previously identified a memory card concealed within a pen with a hollowed-out interior, which contained vital evidence in a human trafficking case. On another occasion, he'd flagged traces of explosives that were so slight that even the laboratory had initially overlooked them. I've worked with K-9 units for 12 years, Reeves told Coleman. Titan operates with exceptional accuracy. His detection rate is almost flawless. The imaging technician brought in a portable X-ray device, meticulously scanning the jacket as everyone observed the connected monitor. Initially, the scan revealed nothing out of the ordinary. However, when the scanner moved across the left lapel, an anomaly appeared. A slim, flat object was visible, concealed within the fabric and difficult to see without assistance. What is that? Coleman inquired, examining the screen. The technician made adjustments, improving the image. It appeared to be a microchip or a small electronic component. Everyone's attention shifted to Harrington, whose face had lost all color. Captain, Coleman stated, her voice now firm, can you please explain what's concealed within your uniform? Harrington's facade crumbled. I want a lawyer. Reeves crouched beside Titan, who had at last calmed down, his objective completed. Good boy, he murmured. You were correct all along. Michael Reeves's relationship with dogs hadn't always been as strong as it was with Titan. Growing up in South Chicago, he'd suffered a bite from a neighbor's Rottweiler when he was 8 years old, an experience that made him cautious around K-9s for several years. Although he'd largely overcome his concerns when he joined the Chicago Police Department at 23, he still never envisioned becoming a K-9 handler. A shift occurred during his 4th year as a police officer, after he observed K-9 officer Patrice Williams and her Belgian Malinois, Rex, successfully locate a kidnapping suspect through an industrial park, leading to the rescue of a 6-year-old child. The accuracy, the teamwork, and the unspoken connection between the handler and dog made a profound impression on him. 3 months afterward, Reeves submitted his application for the K-9 unit. His supervisor expressed surprise. Reeves had established a strong reputation in cybercrime investigation, not field operations. However, something about the connection between handler and dog resonated with him. You sure about this, Mike? His sergeant had inquired. K-9 work isn't merely a job, it's a lifestyle. That dog goes home with you, lives with you, depends on you. I'm sure, Reeves replied, with more conviction than he actually possessed. The Homeland Security K-9 training center in Texas assigned him to Titan, then a 2-year-old shepherd who had previously failed 2 training attempts, not due to a lack of ability, but because of what instructors described as excessive analytical behavior. Head trainer Martinez explained that most detection dogs alert immediately upon finding a target. Titan, however, pauses, verifies, then alerts. This makes him slower in certification tests, but could potentially lead to greater accuracy in complex environments. The initial weeks of their partnership presented difficulties. Reeves, who was still developing his handler skills, experienced frustration when Titan would hesitate during detection drills, appearing unfocused. A significant moment occurred during a training exercise when Titan bypassed the simulated explosive material and instead signaled an alert to an airport worker's bag, which was not part of the planned scenario. A subsequent security check revealed prescription medications the worker had inadvertently failed to declare. Concerns were raised about medications containing chemical compounds potentially usable in improvised explosives. Martinez acknowledged this, noting it was a thorough observation. Subsequently, Reeves modified his methods, allowing Titan the necessary time for comprehension. Their certification scores subsequently increased significantly, and upon assignment to O'Hare's International Terminal, they rapidly demonstrated their ability to identify anomalies that others overlooked. Their most impactful case occurred 8 months prior, when Titan flagged a diplomatic pouch for inspection, a request technically beyond their jurisdiction. Reeves, trusting his partner, had delayed the diplomatic courier, resulting in an international incident. This was ultimately resolved when a subsequent investigation uncovered counterfeit diplomatic credentials and smuggled biological samples. The case had resulted in commendations for them and a reputation for being willing to follow Titan's nose regardless of politics or pressure. Trust the dog had become Reeves' personal mantra. When in doubt, when under pressure, when facing skepticism from superiors, those 3 words centered him, and Titan had never let him down. Even now, as the investigation into Captain Harrington intensified, Reeves clung to that certainty amidst the growing tension around them. With methodical precision, the specialized TSA technical team worked, carefully cutting through the stitching of Captain Harrington's uniform lapel under the bright examination lights. Captain Harrington sat handcuffed to a chair in the corner, silent since requesting legal representation 15 minutes earlier. Careful, cautioned senior technician Sophia Lin as her colleague extracted a paper-thin electronic component from within the fabric. Don't damage it. A hush fell over the room as Lin secured the item within a designated evidence container. Roughly the size of a postage stamp but thinner than a credit card, the device displayed visible copper traces and a miniature power source. Initial assessment? Coleman inquired. Lin scrutinized it using a magnifying lens. It appears to be a custom electronic component, not commercially produced, possibly a triggering mechanism or a remote activation device. Reeves felt his pulse quicken. For what? That's what we need to find out, Lin said, connecting the container to a specialized scanner. However, whatever it is, your dog stopped it from boarding that aircraft. FBI Special Agent Victor Ramirez arrived in the room, having been summoned immediately after the device was found. Captain James Harrington, he stated, consulting a tablet. Or should I say James Harrington Kaiser. The pilot reacted quickly, his eyes widening. According to facial recognition data, you resemble an individual who ceased to be under Interpol surveillance in Frankfurt 3 years prior, Ramirez stated. Your associations with specific extremist organizations were noted. Harrington, also known as Kaiser, abruptly moved toward the door. Although restrained with handcuffs to the chair, his forceful attempt resulted in him and the chair being displaced several feet, at which point 2 officers subdued him. Amidst the conflict, he bit down forcefully on something within his mouth.
Suicide pile.
Ramirez exclaimed, "Get medical personnel in here immediately." The following moments were chaotic as medical staff hurried in, prying open the man's jaw and removing a capsule that was partially dissolved. He was swiftly secured to a gurney and transported to the airport's medical center. He will survive, the paramedic reassured them. We retrieved most of it in time, but he will be unconscious for some time. Once the disturbance subsided, Lin's assessment proceeded with increased intensity. She verified it was undoubtedly a bespoke activation trigger, indicating her screen, intended to connect with an external component, one absent from his possessions. Ramirez addressed Reeves. We must search the aircraft without delay. American Airlines Flight 862 had been completely occupied by the point the emergency evacuation order was issued. Passengers disembarked onto the snowy tarmac, their faces reflecting confusion and frustration as they were guided back to a secure area of the terminal. A specialized explosive detection team thoroughly swept the Boeing 777 from nose to tail, with a particular focus on the flight deck where Harrington would have been stationed. Titan worked alongside the bomb-sniffing dogs, his approach noticeably altered. He was methodical and precise, carefully examining each section before proceeding. While in the co-pilot's seat, Titan issued an alert from beneath the standard cushion. The technical team meticulously removed the cushion, uncovering what initially appeared to be a typical component of the seat's mechanical structure. However, closer inspection revealed otherwise. A second electronic device, significantly larger and more intricate, was hidden within the seat's adjustment mechanism. A bomb technician confirmed the presence of a remote-triggered explosive device following a scan. The device was sophisticated, featuring low metal content, which explains why it bypassed standard pre-flight checks. How severe? Reeves inquired softly. The technician's face showed deep concern. If it had landed here, it would have pierced the cockpit floor, potentially harming vital flight systems. A disaster in flight above the Atlantic. Ramirez's phone sounded. Following a short call, he addressed the team. The pilot is conscious and coherent. Captain James Harrington Kaiser was sitting upright in the hospital bed, his arms restrained to the side supports. His complexion was pale in the bright medical illumination. 2 FBI agents stood watch at the entryway as Ramirez, Coleman, and Reeves entered the room. Titan had been kept outside with another handler, a standard precaution for interrogations. The device has been located and rendered safe, Ramirez announced directly. We are aware of the explosive in the cockpit. What remains unknown is whether there are additional devices. Kaiser's eyes darted between them, assessing their reactions. The unsuccessful suicide attempt had left him physically vulnerable, but mentally sharp. I desire immunity. You are facing federal terrorism charges for attempting to destroy an aircraft, Ramirez stated flatly. Immunity is not being offered. Cooperation could potentially prevent a death sentence. A pause settled between them, then Coleman approached. 243 passengers, Captain, including the crew, children, families, people who entrusted you with their lives. Something in her words appeared to affect him. His shoulders visibly relaxed a little. It wasn't meant to turn out this way, he said at last. Initially, the operation involved only information-gathering intelligence work. Ramirez positioned a recorder on the bedside table. Let's begin from the start. The narrative that unfolded proved to be more intricate than anyone expected. Kaiser had, in fact, been a licensed pilot for 15 years prior to being recruited by a well-organized terrorist network during a layover in Istanbul. His first tasks were relatively straightforward. Adhering to security procedures, I documented vulnerability trends and, on occasion, moved encrypted data drives between overseas divisions. The organization identifies as Ascension, Kaiser informed me. They differ from typical groups. They operate with patience and precision. Certain actions are conceived years beforehand. And this operation? Reeves inquired. It's phase 1 of a 3-part sequence, Kaiser responded. Coordinated attacks targeting 3 transatlantic flights, highlighting security weaknesses despite measures implemented after September 11th. The initial flight served as the first test. Complete operational information revealed that Kaiser had received the custom-made explosives during a stopover in Dubai 3 weeks prior and had installed them during standard maintenance intervals, times when pilots frequently inspect their aircraft. The activation mechanisms integrated into his uniform would have engaged once the plane attained cruising altitude over the Atlantic. The other 2 pilots, are they in place? Ramirez inquired.
Kaiser nodded slowly.
Flights from Frankfurt to New York, Paris to Chicago were scheduled within the next 48 hours. Coleman was already on her phone, coordinating with international authorities. There's more, Kaiser continued, his voice dropping. The Chicago apartment, Unit 512 at Lakeside Towers, served as a network safe house. A team was dispatched immediately to the address. Within an hour, images began flooding into the secure tablets Ramirez carried. The apartment had been transformed into an advanced operations hub, containing blueprints of major airports, 3 protocol documents, and, most concerningly, detailed specifications for the explosive devices. This extended beyond 3 planes, Ramirez observed, as he reviewed the files. They were analyzing the entire international aviation security system. Kaiser affirmed this with a nod. Ascension is pursuing a long-term strategy. The plane attacks served as a demonstration of capability. The actual objective is the worldwide air transportation system, pinpointing vulnerabilities and exploiting them in a methodical way. Ramirez insisted on names. He wanted the names of all individuals involved. Kaiser provided the information he possessed, clarifying that the network functioned in separate units with restricted shared knowledge. His main contact was referred to only as the coordinator, a woman he had encountered on 2 occasions, both times at busy international terminals where observation was difficult. Kaiser cautioned that she would be watching news reports. He stated that when my flight doesn't arrive as scheduled, she's going to realize something is amiss. Contingency plans will then be initiated. I inquired about these plans, and he responded that he didn't know the specifics, but there is a secondary operations center located somewhere near the airport. Reeves considered Titan's remarkable detection capabilities, the device integrated into my uniform. I asked what could have made it detectable to my dog. Kaiser appeared truly puzzled, saying it shouldn't have been. The components had been deliberately engineered to prevent chemical detection. Still, Reeves insisted. He focused on you right away. The ex-pilot denied it. Then your dog is either incredibly fortunate or remarkably skilled, as these devices underwent trials involving K-9 teams in 3 countries. As they departed the hospital room, Ramirez addressed Reeves. We must locate that secondary operations center quickly. I know someone who can help, Reeves replied, looking towards the exit where Titan waited, his posture watchful even though considerable time had elapsed since their morning patrol had evolved into something far more important. Snow fell in heavy flakes as the tactical team gathered in the airport maintenance area, their breath appearing as vapor in the frigid air. Reeves checked Titan's protective vest once more before fastening the specialized booties intended to shield the dog's paws from sharp objects and chemical hazards. The maintenance facility comprises 5 distinct buildings, FBI Tactical Commander Wilson clarified, indicating the blueprint shown on a tablet. Considering Kaiser's restricted intelligence and cell phone triangulation data from his known contacts, we suspect Building C is our most probable target. Ramirez acknowledged. The coordinator, our suspect, probably isn't aware that we've detected the operation, but she will likely become suspicious when Kaiser's flight arrived without any issues, Coleman added. Reeves knelt beside Titan. Ready, boy? He whispered. The shepherd's alert stance provided the response he needed. The approach was silent and coordinated. 3 teams prepared to enter concurrently from separate access points, with Reeves and Titan accompanying the primary entry team. As they approached Building C, an unremarkable building containing electrical systems for runway lighting, Titan's actions validated their assessment. The shepherd's demeanor shifted, his movements becoming more measured, his nose working intensely. He's detected something, Reeves murmured into his radio. The tactical team then established positions around the primary entrance. With a 3-count signal, they forced the door, moving quickly into the poorly lit interior. The front office seemed ordinary. Maintenance logs, shift schedules, and equipment manuals were neatly arranged on metal shelving units. However, Titan wasn't focused on the office. He pulled Reeves towards a door labeled electrical access only, his sense of urgency clear. Beyond the door, a staircase descended to a sublevel that wasn't included in the airport's official blueprints. The team proceeded cautiously, tactical lights showing the restricted passage. At the lower level, they discovered what seemed like a typical maintenance room, with the exception of the woman positioned near a laptop computer, her hand positioned above the keyboard. FBI. Hands where we can see them, Ramirez announced. Rather than obeying, the woman activated a key and reached for something inside her jacket. The tactical team reacted instantly, 2 officers restraining her while others secured the room. Titan emitted a sharp bark, drawing Reeves towards a storage cabinet situated along the far wall. Check it, Wilson instructed. Within the cabinet, They found their worst suspicions confirmed additional specialized explosive devices, numbering at least 20 units, each resembling those found on the aircraft, although with differing mounting configurations. "She's initiating a data wipe," the technical specialist reported, as he examined the computer. "But we caught it in time." The woman, later identified as Elena Vostov, a known associate of several extremist groups, remained silent as she was handcuffed and led away. However, the evidence was compelling. The room held everything necessary for a coordinated attack on multiple aircraft, including devices in various stages of assembly, airline schedules, security rotation patterns, and most disturbingly, personnel files on dozens of potential flight crew recruits like Kaiser. Ramirez understood this extended far beyond just the current flights, reviewing the data. This was a long-term operation, years in the making. As the FBI evidence team documented the scene, Reeves took Titan to each corner of the room, ensuring nothing was overlooked. In the final area, behind a ventilation panel, the Shepherd alerted once more. Inside was a small hard drive carefully hidden. Wilson noted this as they secured the drive, seeing it as one final insurance policy. Emergency vehicles surrounded the maintenance area, their lights illuminating the falling snow with alternating red and blue patterns. A sense of the scale of what they had averted began to settle as word spread through the command center. It began with one pilot, Coleman said, observing as the last of the evidence was loaded for transport. "If your dog hadn't stopped him," Reeves nodded, scratching Titan behind the ears. "One flight becomes 3. A series of 3 successful attacks provided a template for many more. The Shepherd looked up at him, snow gathering on his dark fur, the mission completed. 2 days later, Reeves was in the airport's administrative conference room as Airport Director Margaret Chun spoke to the team. Titan sat attentively beside him, recently groomed and wearing his formal canine and unit harness. According to Chen, her voice filled with gravity, a potentially devastating terrorist plot was stopped thanks to the outstanding efforts of Officer Reeves and his canine partner Titan, in conjunction with TSA, FBI, and airport security. International authorities have verified the successful apprehension of 2 additional pilots in Frankfurt and Paris, averting what would have been coordinated attacks. Ramirez then advanced, acknowledging Reeves with a nod. Findings from the Secondary Operations Center have resulted in the identification of 17 Ascension Network operatives in 8 countries. Apprehensions are in progress. Reeves listened, one hand resting lightly on Titan's head. For the Shepherd, it had been a routine day of performing his duties, utilizing his exceptional senses to safeguard the humans nearby. He hadn't grasped the importance of the pilot he'd stopped, or the lives he'd preserved. He had a sense that something was amiss and wouldn't yield until someone paid attention. "Officer Reeves," Chun stated, "the Department of Homeland Security has asked that you and Titan provide training consultations for their aviation security division. Your approaches, especially your reliance on your partner's intuition, even when standard procedures indicated something different, embody the kind of flexible security thinking that is necessary." Following the meeting's conclusion and the exchange of congratulations, Reeves knelt beside his partner. "Good boy, Titan," he whispered, briefly pressing his forehead against the Shepherd's. "The best boy." Titan's tail wagged once, his dark eyes meeting Reeves with what almost seemed like understanding. Then his ears perked up, his attention already shifting to the next task, the next patrol, the next threat that only he might detect. They walked back together toward Terminal 3, prepared to resume their observation of the thousands of travelers who would never realize how narrowly they avoided disaster, nor that their safety had been ensured by an officer and a dog who prevented a pilot from boarding his plane. Have you ever seen a working dog like Titan perform duties at an airport or public place? We welcome your stories in the comments below. Do you believe in your pet's intuition regarding people, even if the reasoning isn't clear? Many handlers report that their canine partners often detect things humans overlook. What's the most remarkable animal story you've encountered about an animal averting a disaster or rescuing lives? Please share your experiences. We review all comments and may include your story in a future video. What other canine heroes would you like us to highlight in upcoming videos? Tell us what topics you're most interested in. If the story of Titan's incredible save at O'Hare International Airport impressed you, Please share this video with friends and family who appreciate the amazing capabilities of working dogs. Together, we can spread awareness about these four-legged heroes who serve alongside their human partners. Rewatch our previous canine stories displayed now, including the amazing story of Rex, who tracked a kidnapper through a blizzard, and Luna, who discovered a hidden human trafficking operation at a border checkpoint. Remember, sometimes the greatest heroes walk on four legs. See you in the next video. A service dog barked continuously at a stroller in a busy mall. The mother became angry, security was summoned, and shoppers grew frustrated. But when the blanket was finally removed, what they witnessed moved the entire crowd to tears. Before we begin today's story, please leave a comment below indicating your location. And if you enjoy heartwarming stories about police dogs like this one, remember to subscribe. Prepare for what's about to unfold. The Westfield Shopping Center was filled with the usual weekend shopping activity. Families with strollers filled with bags, teenagers gathered around the food court, and a continuous blend of 1,000 conversations filled the space under the large glass ceiling. Afternoon sunlight shone through the skylights, creating warm areas on the polished tile floors as shoppers moved through the busy walkways between stores. Jessica Winters navigated the Saturday crowd with a practiced and efficient manner, her steps deliberate and measured. Beside her walked Echo, a Belgian Malinois wearing a professional red service vest with medical alert patches. Unlike the hurried shoppers who bumped shoulders and moved around each other, Echo moved with military precision, maintaining a perfect heel position despite the chaos, his attentive brown eyes occasionally glancing up at Jessica's face to check her status. "Excuse me, please," Jessica said as they moved past a group of teenagers who had stopped suddenly to take selfies in front of a clothing display. She kept her right hand lightly on Echo's specialized mobility harness, not because she required the physical support that day, but because the connection helped her feel stable amidst the overwhelming sights and sounds of the mall. The holiday decorations had already been put up, even though Thanksgiving was still 2 weeks away. Large silver and red decorations were suspended from the ceiling, and artificial pine garlands adorned the railings of the second-floor walkways. A faint piano version of Winter Wonderland played from afar, struggling to be heard over the noise of the crowd, the sounds of conversations, squeaking stroller wheels, and periodic announcements from the mall's public address system. Jessica glanced at her watch. It was 2:17 p.m. She had planned this trip carefully, arriving after the lunch rush but before the evening crowd descended. Her mental checklist was almost finished. New running shoes, the birthday gift for her niece, and one more stop at the bookstore to pick up the novel her book club was reading next. Then she could return to the quiet sanctuary of her apartment before the familiar tension in her shoulders escalated into a full-blown anxiety attack. Echo stayed calm and composed, his training clearly visible in his deliberate actions. He didn't behave like typical dogs who might investigate spilled food or react to appealing smells. Instead, he concentrated entirely on Jessica and any possible dangers to her safety. When a young child unexpectedly cried at a store called Toyland, Echo quickly assessed Jessica's response, prepared to offer deep pressure therapy should the noise upset her. Fortunately, this was a positive day. Jessica reacted with a slight flinch, then proceeded walking with a deep breath. The central court of the mall appeared before them, a circular space featuring a decorative fountain and benches for weary shoppers to rest. Jessica guided them toward the quieter path along the perimeter, avoiding the congested group of people observing a weekend product demonstration. Echo modified his speed seamlessly, guiding their path as though he and Jessica functioned as one unit within the crowd, their synchronicity stemming from countless hours of shared experience. Jessica had not always required Echo's presence. 5 years ago, she was Staff Sergeant Jessica Winters, a combat medic with the 4th Infantry Division, recognized for maintaining remarkable composure amidst the most severe mass casualty events. She had treated wounded soldiers under fire, stabilized blast injuries in helicopters, and once performed an emergency airway procedure during a sandstorm with almost zero visibility. Her commanding officers had described her as unshakable. Then occurred the roadside bomb outside Kandahar. Jessica had been the first to respond, treating 3 critically wounded soldiers while awaiting medevac. She had rescued all 3, but the 4th, her closest friend on the deployment, had died despite her desperate efforts. The consequences were stark: traumatic brain injury, shrapnel wounds to her left leg, and the unseen wounds of PTSD that ultimately proved more debilitating than her physical injuries. Returning to civilian life had become a minefield of triggers. Crowds, sudden noises, certain smells that instantly transported her back to the worst moments of her service. She explored therapy, medication, and support groups, but none provided complete relief until the VA's service dog program paired her with Echo 3 years ago. Echo was a unique service dog. This Belgian Malinois had been removed from a military working dog program, not due to a lack of skill, but because of his gentle nature, a characteristic that made him ideally suited for medical alert duties. His specialized training encompassed recognizing the minute biochemical alterations that foreshadow Jessica's panic attacks and seizures, a complication stemming from her TBI that occurred infrequently but posed a significant risk. "He is observing your body chemistry," the trainer had clarified during their placement. "Variations in your respiration, minuscule perspiration, and even alterations in your walk that you won't perceive deliberately. Echo will provide a warning before you are even aware of an issue." Their bond had developed past the boundaries of training. Echo possessed a remarkable skill in evaluating risks in Jessica's surroundings, differentiating between minor anxieties and real threats. He would position his body to shield Jessica from anything potentially triggering, whether approaching strangers or sudden movements, while largely remaining unnoticed during everyday interactions. Above all, Echo had restored Jessica's independence. Prior to this, she had rarely left her apartment, neglecting medical appointments and withdrawing from friends and family. Currently, she volunteers twice weekly at the VA hospital, has restarted her nursing education, and can navigate public spaces like this mall, still challenging but achievable with Echo's consistent support and alerting abilities. Many people didn't realize that beneath Echo's calm professional appearance lay a dog capable of detecting incredibly small chemical shifts, changes undetectable by human senses or medical instruments. His alerts stemmed not only from excellent training, but also from a complex biological detection system combined with steadfast loyalty. Jessica directed Echo towards the central court fountain, intending to cross over to reach the bookstore on the opposite side. As they walked past a row of benches near the fountain, Echo's demeanor shifted, his ears pricked forward, his head lifted slightly higher, and his gait lost its fluid rhythm for a brief moment. Jessica noticed it instantly, having spent 3 years together. Even the slightest changes in Echo's behavior registered like alarm bells. "What is it, buddy?" she murmured, scanning the area for potential triggers. Echo's attention had fixed on something ahead and to their right. Jessica's attention followed his gaze to a navy blue stroller situated next to a bench. A woman, seemingly in her 30s and with dark hair styled in a loose bun, was organizing shopping bags nearby. The baby in the stroller seemed to be sleeping calmly under a thin blanket featuring cartoon elephants. Jessica softly adjusted Echo's harness, trying to get his attention. "Come on, focus." However, instead of following her instruction, Echo's body became even more rigid. A soft whine came from him, a sound Jessica had seldom heard from her well-trained service dog. Echo moved closer to the stroller, abandoning his heel position for the first time in public that Jessica could recall. "Echo, heel," Jessica instructed more sternly, feeling a blush rise on her cheeks as a nearby elderly couple looked in their direction. Service dogs were meant to be unobtrusive in public spaces. That was the expectation. Echo had never deviated from protocol in this way before. The dog obeyed with evident hesitation, returning to her side while still watching the stroller. After 3 more steps, Echo stopped abruptly, firmly placing his feet and declining to budge from the stroller's line of sight. "Is something the matter with your dog?" the mother inquired, observing Echo's focused attention. Her voice carried a trace of irritation as she looked between her shopping bags and the service dog. "I'm sorry," Jessica started, but Echo interrupted her apology with a quick, forceful bark that resonated across the central court. People shopping turned towards the sound, their faces showing a mix of curiosity and disapproval. "Control your dog, please," the mother stated, her annoyance now clear. "You're frightening my baby." However, the baby hadn't moved at the loud bark, a detail that Jessica's training immediately recognized as odd. Typically, sleeping infants would react with a start to such a sound. Echo barked once more, then again, his barks becoming increasingly urgent. It wasn't aggression. Jessica understood Echo's behaviors completely. It was an alert, mirroring the pattern he exhibited when sensing a potential medical crisis. "Ma'am, I believe," Jessica began, but the mother interrupted her. "Service dogs shouldn't bark in public," the woman retorted, rising and moving defensively toward her stroller. "You need to leave." Two mall security guards, both wearing navy blue uniforms, moved towards the disturbance. The taller guard, a middle-aged man with salt and pepper hair, and a name tag identifying him as Wilson, spoke to Jessica. "Ma'am, we've received reports of your dog causing a disturbance for shoppers. Is everything all right?" Echo continued to bark, pulling towards the stroller with unusual focus. Jessica felt as though many people were watching her, judging, and presuming she lacked control over her service dog. The demands to apologize and depart were intense, yet Echo's actions conveyed a contrasting message, one that years of collaboration had shown her to be reliable in interpreting. "My service dog is medically trained," Jessica stated, working to maintain a composed tone. "He is specifically alerting to something concerning regarding that baby. This isn't typical behavior for him." The second security guard, a younger woman with her hair pulled back in a tight ponytail, approached the mother. "Ma'am, would you please check on your child, just to be cautious?" "This is absurd," the mother protested. "She's fine. Simply taking her afternoon nap. I'm only shopping for less than an hour." Wilson frowned, visibly uneasy with the circumstances. "Ma'am," he addressed Jessica, "service animals are not permitted to be disruptive in public spaces. Mall policy dictates that." "I'm aware of mall policy," Jessica responded, her voice revealing the influence of her military training. Echo wasn't issuing this alert arbitrarily. He was detecting a medically significant issue. Echo had now activated his complete medical alert sequence, sitting stiffly, vocalizing with a characteristic 3 barks, then pawing the ground. This was the same pattern he exhibited when identifying Jessica's rare seizures in advance, a behavior that had prevented serious injury on multiple occasions. "Look," Jessica stated, referencing her medical experience, "I served as a combat medic." Echo is programmed to recognize specific medical crises. There's an issue with that baby, and each moment we spend debating could be critical. Jessica initially encountered Echo on a rainy Tuesday at the Patriot Service Dogs Training Center in Colorado, recently completing intensive therapy and still using a cane for her left leg. She initially doubted a dog could achieve what medication and counseling had not. Instead of the warm welcome Jessica anticipated, Echo approached her cautiously, deliberately sniffing her hands, her legs, and her breath. He then settled directly in front of her, his eyes fixed on her face as if committing every detail to memory. The turning point in their partnership occurred 3 months into their training. Their initial period had presented difficulties. Jessica's fluctuating symptoms required Echo to identify patterns that even medical devices sometimes failed to detect. The team utilized scent samples gathered during Jessica's pre-seizure states, anxiety attacks, and normal days to train Echo to distinguish between them. Subsequently, one evening, while Jessica was having coffee with her roommate, Echo abruptly initiated his alert behavior, remaining rigid, emitting 3 distinct barks, then pawing the ground. Jessica felt well and initially attributed it to a training mistake. "Echo, settle," she commanded. Instead of following instructions, Echo had turned to her roommate, Diane, repeating the alert pattern with increasing urgency. "Maybe he needs to go out?" Diane suggested, rising. She had taken 2 steps when she collapsed to the floor. Paramedics later confirmed she had experienced a dangerous blood sugar crash that could have resulted in a coma if she had been alone. Echo hadn't been alerting for Jessica at all. He recognized Diane's declining glucose levels, a condition she hadn't received a diagnosis for at that time. Following that day, Jessica's faith in Echo became unwavering. Whenever he provided an alert, she responded, irrespective of whether she experienced any symptoms herself. That established history of trust is what provided Jessica with the assurance to maintain her position now. Although met with skeptical looks and the mother's initial hesitation, Echo had gained her confidence through demonstrated dependability, and she was committed to supporting his warning, regardless of any awkwardness. A small group of people had assembled, whispering amongst themselves. An older woman approached. "Perhaps you should examine the baby, dear. It's better to be cautious." The mother's certainty lessened a little as she looked at her child, who remained perfectly still. She claimed to be a deep sleeper, but a note of doubt entered her voice. "Your baby hasn't reacted to any sounds," Jessica remarked gently. "Not even a flinch at Echo's barking. That wasn't typical behavior for an infant." The mother's face changed as she processed this. She turned to the stroller, her shoulders showing strain. "Please, please," Jessica said, her voice becoming more gentle. "Echo has never been incorrect about a medical alert. Not in 3 years. My concern for your daughter prompted my request." The security guards looked at each other, appearing uncertain about the appropriate procedure for this uncommon circumstance. Wilson approached the stroller. "Ma'am, may we briefly examine the situation?" he asked. "Then everyone can resume their activities." The mother paused, then agreed, moving towards the stroller. "Very well. I'll demonstrate that she is simply sleeping, and then I anticipate an apology." Jessica remained behind, ensuring Echo stayed calm as the mother bent over the stroller and carefully pulled back the blanket with the elephant design. The woman's annoyed look quickly changed, and color left her face. "Madison," she said, her voice growing louder. When the baby didn't react, she touched her daughter's cheek. "Madison, wake up, baby." The security guard stepped forward instantly as the mother's voice rose to panic. "She's not waking up." Tears streamed down her face as she desperately unfastened the stroller's buckles. "If something's wrong, please help." Wilson quickly radioed for medical help, and his partner assisted the mother in lifting the unresponsive infant from the stroller. The baby's lips were slightly bluish, and while her chest rose with shallow breaths, she didn't respond to her mother's increasingly frantic efforts to rouse her. "I'm a former combat medic," Jessica stated, stepping forward with composure. "Can I assist while we await medical personnel?" The mother nodded vigorously, tears running down her face as Jessica drew near. Echo remained calm, his earlier urgent alerting now replaced by watchful observation. Jessica assessed the baby's vital signs with practiced skill. "She is breathing, but it's shallow. Pulse is detectable but weak." Jessica turned to the mother. "Has Madison been unwell recently? Are there any existing medical concerns?" "No, nothing," the mother responded, stammering. "During her routine checkup last week, everything was perfect. She simply fell asleep while shopping." An older man then approached from the assembled group. "I'm Dr. Brenner, a pediatrician," he stated. "May I examine her?" With the mother's consent, the doctor rapidly assessed the infant. "Pupils are responsive but sluggish," he observed. "Temperature appears normal." He turned to Jessica and spoke softly. "This looks neurological. How long has she been unresponsive?" "I don't know," the mother cried. "She fell asleep approximately 40 minutes ago. She typically sleeps soundly during shopping trips." The movement of the stroller. Her voice faltered as the realization struck her. "Oh God, has she been like this the entire time? I believed she was simply sleeping." Mall medical staff arrived with a first aid kit and oxygen. Shortly after, paramedics navigated the crowd with a gurney and pediatric medical equipment. Service dogs signaled to the baby. Dr. Brenner briefed the paramedics. "The infant is unresponsive, but breathing. Possible neurological event is suspected." As the paramedics commenced their assessment, the lead EMT observed Echo, a Belgian Malinois medical alert dog. These dogs are remarkable scent detectors. Last year, we had one alert to a carbon monoxide victim who exhibited no visible symptoms. Their olfactory capabilities are extraordinary, Dr. Brenner stated, watching Echo with renewed respect. Certain studies indicate they can identify molecular changes at concentrations as low as parts per trillion. Finding it is comparable to locating a single drop of blood within 20 Olympic swimming pools. The medical uses are still being explored, especially for illnesses where early diagnosis significantly enhances results. Ramirez nodded as he secured a pulse oximeter to Madison's small finger. He had observed dogs detecting seizures prior to clinical signs, identifying malignancies before scans could, and even forecasting cardiac events. This little one is lucky that you and your partner were present today. Amber Parker, holding her daughter's hand, whispered, "Your dog knew. How could he possibly know when I didn't?" The paramedics responded with practice speed, securing the infant to the pediatric backboard and connecting monitoring devices. Paramedic Ramirez examined the readings, his expression concerned. "Oxygen saturation is lower than I'd like," he observed, placing a small oxygen mask over Madison's face. "These readings indicate potential seizure activity, though without convulsions. We are considering the possibility of absence seizures or a postictal state." "What does that mean? Will she be all right?" Amber asked, holding her daughter's hand. "We need to transfer her to Children's Hospital for a definitive diagnosis," Ramirez stated. "Fortunately, we are identifying this early, preventing potential oxygen deprivation that could cause harm." While a female paramedic was rechecking Madison's vital signs, she paused, moving closer to observe something. "Ms. Parker, has Madison received any medications recently?" the paramedic inquired. "No, none," Amber replied. "She has never taken medication." The paramedic indicated faint markings on the inner side of Madison's elbow. "These appear to be injection sites, but they are very small, the type we sometimes see with specific medical tests." Amber stated, with evident confusion, that the only injection her child had received was for routine vaccinations during the checkup last week. Dr. Brenner examined the marks and frowned. He noted that these were more recent than a week ago and did not align with typical vaccination injections. Echo immediately became alert, focusing intently on the diaper bag hanging from the stroller handle. Jessica recognized this particular behavior. Echo had identified something significant. "Ma'am," Jessica said cautiously, "would you mind if we examined Madison's diaper bag? Echo is signaling something within." Amber agreed promptly. Any prior doubts disappeared. Naturally, anything that could assist. Security Officer Wilson took the bag, and Jessica directed Echo through a methodical scent examination. The dog quickly pinpointed a side pocket, persistently nudging it with his nose, employing the method he uses for identifying substances. Within the pocket, a small medicine bottle was discovered, labeled as infant acetaminophen, though the security seal was broken and the bottle was only half full. "I didn't place that there," Amber stated, her face growing paler. "That's not our brand, and Madison hasn't required any pain medication." Ramirez carefully placed the bottle in an evidence bag. "We'll have this analyzed at the hospital. It's possible it contains another substance or has been altered." The second paramedic spoke with urgency. "Madison's oxygen levels are decreasing. Immediate transport is required." As preparations began to move Madison, Echo whimpered gently and rested his head against Jessica's leg. This was his way of indicating that his task was complete. He had identified the underlying issue well before human observation of the symptoms, potentially averting a significantly more severe outcome. "Your dog is remarkable," Dr. Brenner told Jessica as the paramedics began moving the gurney. "For 30 years, I have worked in pediatrics, and I observed no outward signs of distress in that child. Yet, he recognized the situation instantly." Amber, accompanying the gurney, glanced back at Jessica. "Thank you," she said, tears flowing down her face. "I'm so sorry I didn't believe you. If you hadn't insisted." She was unable to complete the sentence. "Thank Echo," Jessica responded quietly. "He is the hero here." The Central Court had been converted into a temporary command center. Police officers arrived soon after Madison was transported, establishing a perimeter around the stroller. A bottle from the diaper bag was now considered evidence in what the lead detective described as a possible instance of intentional drugging. Echo remained composed beside Jessica as she provided her statement to Detective Portman, a woman with a serious expression and kind eyes who documented every aspect of Echo's warning actions with considerable interest. According to Portman, the dog identified a problem with the child prior to any outward signs of illness. Jessica corroborated this, confirming that Echo possesses specialized scent detection training for medical emergencies. He is capable of identifying chemical alterations within the body that signify specific medical occurrences. Jessica further stated that Echo specifically indicated the diaper bag after the child received treatment. She explained that he exhibits distinct alert patterns depending on the circumstances. His actions concerning the bag indicate he perceived a substance present, rather than solely a medical issue. Portman added another notation. Ms. Parker stated the baby had a checkup last week. We are investigating who may have accessed the child or her belongings since that time. Wilson arrived accompanied by the mall manager, a tense woman wearing a charcoal suit, who identified herself as Diane Reynolds. Ms. Winters, Reynolds stated, I want to express my sincere gratitude to you and your service dog for your actions today. Our security team will be reviewing our protocols concerning service animal alerts. She looked at Wilson, who appeared suitably concerned. We recognize there are some areas where we need to improve our training. Echo was simply performing his trained tasks, Jessica responded. Wilson added, the hospital contacted us with an update. The baby is showing signs of stabilization. Medical tests were underway, but the doctor mentioned that a further delay in treatment could have had serious consequences, then stopped speaking, leaving the meaning unstated. A young woman who had been shopping in the vicinity approached cautiously. I filmed what occurred using my phone, she stated. I didn't mean to be odd, but my brother is applying to service dog programs, and I wish to demonstrate how they function in public settings. She then asked if the footage would be beneficial to the police. Detective Portman promptly collected the woman's contact details. That could be extremely valuable evidence, thank you. As the crowd gradually dispersed, an elderly man approached Jessica. Young lady, I want you to know I've contacted the local news. People need to hear about this, not just about the unfortunate situation with the baby, but about the incredible work service dogs like yours perform. Jessica experienced a moment of worry regarding potential media coverage, but Echo instinctively leaned against her leg, offering the calming pressure that helped manage her nervous system. She inhaled deeply, concentrating on the most important aspects. Madison was undergoing treatment, an inquiry was in progress, and Echo had performed as he was trained. The police concluded securing the area while Jessica and Echo were readying to depart. Officer Wilson approached them at the mall entrance. He offered a sincere apology to both of us. 20 years in security and I've never seen anything like what your dog did today, he said. If we'd followed protocol and asked you to leave, he shook his head, expressing gratitude for your resolve. As Jessica and Echo walked through the parking lot toward her car, the adrenaline from the incident began to fade, leaving her physically drained but mentally clear. She stopped beside her SUV, kneeling down to bring herself eye level with her partner. You did good, buddy, she whispered, gently stroking Echo's face and neck. Really good. Echo's perceptive eyes stayed focused on hers, his expression reflecting complete satisfaction now that his task was finished. He moved closer, touching his forehead against Jessica's in the familiar gesture they frequently shared following challenging situations. Jessica reflected on how she almost questioned Echo due to societal expectations, the looks, the security personnel, the mother's initial displeasure. Apologizing and leaving would have been simpler, attributing Echo's behavior to a temporary lapse. The pressure of public opinion had nearly eclipsed years of collaboration and mutual trust, but Echo remained unwavering, continuing until someone acknowledged his perspective. His conviction prevented a child from a situation paramedics believed could have been intentional drugging. The realization sent a shiver down Jessica's spine, even under the warmth of the afternoon sun. As Jessica started the engine, a text from her VA counselor appeared on her phone. It referenced the news alert about a service dog saving a baby at Westfield. Could that have been Echo and her? The counselor suggested she call if she needed support following the event. News spread rapidly. By tomorrow, reporters would likely be calling, potentially requesting interviews. Ordinarily, this would cause a surge of anxiety, but surprisingly, it felt different this time. Sharing their experiences might help people recognize the crucial role service dogs play, not only in assisting their handlers, but also in safeguarding the broader community. Echo relaxed into his seat, his alert stance softening into a calm watchfulness, ever prepared but no longer sensing immediate threats. Jessica met his look in the rearview mirror, feeling a wave of thankfulness for this remarkable animal who had profoundly changed her life and now had protected someone else. Believe in your dog. This was the initial instruction in service dog training, the basis for all subsequent commands. Recent events had demonstrated why this belief wasn't merely training protocol, but significant insight. Occasionally, a companion could detect things beyond human perception and human assessment. Occasionally, trust meant the difference between a disaster and a fortunate outcome. Have you ever observed an instance where an animal detected something humans entirely overlooked? What accounts for some animals' remarkable ability to sense medical emergencies even before symptoms are apparent? Would you have believed a service dog's alert regarding a stranger's baby, despite the potential for embarrassment? Share your thoughts in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please like and subscribe to our channel for more amazing stories of heroic service animals. Click the bell icon to receive notifications when we upload new videos each week. Please share this video with friends and family who value the special connection between people and their service animals. Watch our previous stories about canine heroes now, and tune in tomorrow at the same time for another inspiring story you won't want to miss.